Yes, this is DJ Ski.
I'm Jeff Wilson.
Hey guys, Andy Broom, Vice President CGC Cards.
Hey, this is Jason Howard with Panini.
Yo, I'm Q Harrison.
Hey gang, this is Tom Verrilli. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Whatnot.
This is Teapot from Sports Card Investor.
This is Adam Rips with V-Friends.
What's up? This is Aaron from Slab Stocks.
Hey, this is Clark from 5 Card Guys and the Cards to the Moon podcast.
Hey guys, this is Jay with Wild Card.
What's up everyone? This is Duke Dodson from Graybos.
What's up everybody? This is Chris Kelsey from Nash Cards.
What's up everyone? This is Mark Hill from My Card Post.
This is Ray Schulte.
This is Chase Krim.
This is Cody from Texas Roadshow Shop.
This is Mark Aaron from WSB Radio in Atlanta, and you are listening to the Sports Card Strategy Show.
I'm loving the content.
Loving the content here.
I'm loving the content here on the Sports Card Strategy Show.
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 And I'm telling you, the Sports Card Strategy Show.
This is the Sports Card Strategy Show with your man, Paul Hickey. What's good?
Be sure to subscribe for year-round advice on keeping your portfolio up to date.
Part of the NoOffSeason.com Sports Card Network, the #1 place for advice on how to make money flipping sports cards. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, there is no off-season.
There is no off-season.
There is no off-season.
And there's no off-season.
You already know, there is no off-season.
No off-season!
All right, you ready to rock?
Ready to go.
When you get into this game, the reason why you pay someone like Paul Hickey to get your sports card strategy together is because sometimes when you're starting out, you need perspective, you need wisdom, you need insights. And so he's been around the track enough times where he can actually coach you up and guide you. Doesn't mean he's going to take you to the promised land tomorrow, but you now have a coach by your side that can advise and kind of even create these pathways where you can get the education yourself. And that's a lot better than thugging it out on your own. Thugging it out on your own.
What? The kids better buy my rookie card now, because after this year, the price ain't coming down.
Welcome in, everybody. I'm your host, Paul Hickey. It's time to sit back, listen, learn, and earn with me on the Sports Card Strategy Show. Plenty of money to be made in this hobby of ours, and we're ready to help you do it. But first, Kendall the Lefty.
You're gonna be out there thugging it out on your own, baby.
What is your favorite part of our show intro, other than the fact that it's like 15 minutes long?
Well, there's actually one part, right? It's like right when you are talking to Gary Vee, I think, that you go, all right, you ready to go? And that's actually what you say to me before we start every time. And so like, I'm just like, getting all my stuff together, getting my notes together for the show, whatever. And then that part goes, all right, you ready to go? I was like, dang, I thought we were mid-intro. And then it's not you. It's a recording of you.
Whether it's Lefty or Gary Vee, I say the same thing. You know, it's like, you ready to rock?
Paul Hickey, the same guy every time.
Or he says ready to rock. I go, you ready to go? And he goes, ready to rock. And then that's when I'd hit like the rock music was my thought on that. Yeah. But my favorite part of our intro is when Ray Schulte goes, I'm telling you, the sports card.
I do like that part too. I'm telling you. It's like he's just been trained so much on his recording voice that is it.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, the Sports Card Strategy Show. I'm like, okay.
And then there's Chase Krim.
Yeah, I think that's the other good one. Is this is Chase Krim? Does Krim even listen anymore to this show?
So, yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
I was texting him yesterday, and we were having a good time. He actually was on Netflix's Raw. Like WWE Raw, he was in the front row. And so he was everybody that like knows Krim would like taking screenshots of it and be like, "Who's this guy on Netflix?" It was pretty funny.
That's hilarious. Welcome in everybody. We have a growing audience here at the Sports Card Strategy Show. Many of you are new listeners. We're gonna help you learn the hobby. That's why you're here, to listen, learn, and earn. And many of you are loyal listeners. We've been doing this. Lefty and I are in our 5th year doing this together. And I am very grateful for what we've been able to build with all of you, a great community. We call it the family, the NoOffSeason.com family. Who's your card guy in the house? Bodini's Cards and Comics and Brandon Meisner. What's going on? We're going to give some more live chat love, of course, throughout the show. Many of you watching over on Instagram at Sports Card Strategy. Pretty Cool Cards Nolensville. Saw Pretty Cool Cards Nolensville. They're a new card shop in Nolensville, Tennessee, in Williamson County. For those of you familiar with the Middle Tennessee area, saw one of their owners and had a good talk with him at Culture Collision. So we're going to get into Culture Collision and why I stopped setting up at card shows and my Culture Collision 2025 recap here in a second. Carolina Breaks, the Hockey Barn 15, Integrity Sports Cards, Wrapper Cards, Cardboard Gems. Have you seen these cards? Nerds Cards, Geo Sports Cards, Big Deal Cards, the Card Carver, Crabtown Cards, Bacco Trading Co. PC. A lot of new names over on Instagram. Jaime Corona, one of our premium members at nooffseason.com, along with Andrew McDade, another premium member at nooffseason.com, and Richard Villarreal. Let's go, fam.
That was nice.
Listen, learn, and earn. I can roll the R's. That is a skill that I have always had within my
5 years. That's what 5 years in Spain will give you.
Yeah, bare minimum. Just a little rolling of the
No
R's.
Spanish, but he can roll his R's.
That's right. That's right. Are you ready to start grading your cards? CGC Cards is the perfect place to slab your favorite sports cards for your PC. From their crystal clear holders to their affordable pricing, CGC Cards is the perfect stop for your PC grading needs. I'll say that. Go to cgccards.com to start grading today. All right, Lefty, let's have some fun. This is my favorite time of the week. Vince Tomasulo in the house. The live chat love. A lot going on, a lot of great stuff to talk about. Want to get to what you've got going on. I just wanted to real quick start the show by kind of talking about my Culture Collision recap, and I'm calling it why I stopped setting up at card shows. Let me just say this. I drove to Atlanta, got in midday Friday. The show started, I think, at 11 a.m. local time. I think I rolled in around 1 p.m. local time. And then I left early Sunday morning to come back. So I was there most of the day. It was open till 7 on Friday. So I was there from 1 till 7 on Friday. And then I was there all day Saturday for the entire thing. And I had a wonderful experience, but let me break this down for you. We'll get into the details throughout the show and in all of our segments. I'll talk a little bit about some of the moves and some of the positive things from the show, from Culture Collision. But overall, what's interesting is that I would say it had about half the tables this year that it did last year. I can speculate on a few different reasons for this. One, I think, is because their show promoter set up a second Culture Collision, got a little ambitious and did a September show that I heard did not go as well. I also noticed, I'm not sure how much you and I talked about this, but when I set up at a show in Franklin, Tennessee, and then the Nashville Big Show, the Nash Dational, in October, this past year in 2024, I noticed that those fall shows were not great. I set up as a vendor at those fall shows, and I was discouraged because there was not enough foot traffic to warrant the amount of tables and the price that we all paid for those tables for those shows that I set up at. And again, I didn't go to the Culture Collision in September. So what I was trying to figure out is I was looking forward to this Culture Collision because I was trying to figure out, are card shows like falling off? Like, are they dead? Or was it just a bad time of year? Like, what's going on? Now, we know that the online card world is far from dead. Like, there's many plays to be had, and we're making money flipping sports cards in the online world of buying, selling, trading sports cards, mostly on eBay, but on some other online marketplaces as well, and social media and things like that. But not to be clickbaity or anything to say our card show's dead, but like I was a little concerned. Now, having gone to this past Culture Collision over this past weekend, I will say that certainly card shows are not dead. It was better, but my concern is that if I would have set up as a vendor, I would have been pissed off about Friday because it was dead. I would have been happy with Saturday because it was good foot traffic. All the vendors I talked to, I don't know if they were BSing me or not, but I talked to almost all the vendors there because there weren't that many vendors there. It was like half the vendors as last year. Every single one I talked to said that they loved it. Like they had a great show. Everything was great. So I don't know if that means that they bought a lot of stuff or that they moved a lot of stuff. From a attendee standpoint, I loved it. I was able to get great. I was able to get what I felt like were great deals. And again, I'll talk about them throughout the episode. But I'm a little not concerned. That's definitely not the right word. But I have a bit of a different mindset when it comes to expectations for card shows now, because I think in 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024, every card show I went to was like bananas in terms of the amount of attendees to vendor ratio. And the last 3 or 4, I would say even including this past weekend, it's not that way. It's like the vendor, it's just like there's not as much foot traffic at these shows. And that's why I stopped setting up as a vendor, because it's not worth my time. If you're a vendor that has a ridiculous amount of inventory and part of your strategic business model is to liquidate specific inventory at card shows, it's worth it for you. I believe that people like you and I and Interner and maybe some of the other people, a lot of our listeners, actually, a lot of our listeners are just like us. I would caution our listeners to like be very selective when it comes to setting up as a vendor at a show to make sure that it's worth your time. I'm not saying don't go to the show. I'm just saying it might be better to just go as an attendee, depending on what the show is, versus trying to set up as a vendor, which is really like, we made a lot of content last year that was about like how you can make money as a vendor. And I think that still holds true, but I think it's a little bit different because, again, the last like 3 or 4 card shows I've been to, I don't believe that the foot traffic has warranted the cost of a table, the entire time that's involved in sitting at the freaking table the whole time. It's just not what it was last year. So I don't know if you have any recent experience with this or any thoughts or questions, but I just wanted to throw that out there at the start of the show.
I mean, my recent experience is that I go to 2 to 3 card shows a year, and the national being the main one that we attend and go to, and so my first question is, do you think this like further evolves into a different national strategy than we've done typically? And maybe, that's like a larger conversation, maybe something that we figure out over time. But, I think that there's been an overall, the macro where this hobby has gone is this, like every show we went to was bigger than the last, because me and you got in around the time that it was really taking off. And then the bubble popped, and then there was like a little lack of attendance, and then you started to see it kind of rise back up again once. And all the shows show me is that there are faces to people that are buying the cards that I'm selling, and so it helps me like just reiterate, I'm not the only one doing this. It also reiterates to me that there's so many people that are interested in different things than I am. Like you go to a show and you're just like, this guy's selling out of, 95 upper deck cards or something. And you're just like, I never, ever would have bought that ever. And then there's a guy with a whole table for it, and he's been there for 10 years, And so it's like, shows are just a really eye-opening thing for me to step back and say, this is bigger than me. And it's almost like I go just to get some research on the hobby, like kind of touching the pulse of like, where is the online community? If that makes sense.
That's a great perspective. I agree. I have like there's a little bit of humility that I feel at shows or along the same regards that you're talking about, where I'm just like learning and taking in all this information. I think the biggest takeaway for me, first of all, I think the hobby's just as healthy as it's been the last 5 years,
Agreed.
if not healthier. So I think I definitely want to reiterate that point to everybody. I don't know that the foot traffic to vendor ratio or anything like that is concerning at all. I just think what it means to me is that more than ever, we all need to be super selective with the cards that we're buying if we intend to make money essentially on each specific transaction. Now, the hobby has different, dozens and dozens and even hundreds of different avenues that you can go down for enjoyment. And I think when you go to a show, you see a lot of stuff, to your point. You see a lot of people buying and selling at percentages of comps and playing the margins game. They're obviously in it to make money, right? You see people that are collectors, like true collectors that are trying to build sets and hold things long term. But for the most part, everyone's trying to make money. Honestly, for the most part, everyone's trying to make money, not just at shows, but when you're communicating with anybody online or in person, card shops, shows, everything's based on comps. Everyone's trying to make money. So it is what it is. I like that. I acknowledge that I have no problem with that. I just think more than ever, with the supply of cards, I don't think that the hobby numbers in the hobby from a buyer, seller, transactor standpoint, I don't think they're plateauing or diminishing. I think the hobby is growing.
Absolutely.
But the amount of supply, I think, is growing more than the amount of hobbyists. And so that
Agreed.
goes to your point with like what you just said about how many cards there are. There's just so many. And so I think being selective, I think making sure that you're not I think it's going to be just as much of a buyer's market. It should be as much of a buyer's market as it is a seller's market. And I think because we're all buying and selling, we need to make sure that we're buying not always, like, it doesn't always have to be under comps, but it just has to be very, very smart purchase with a selling marker in mind, the right card for the right player at the right time. Narrow your focus. Don't spread yourself too wide. Become a subject matter expert on a particular card or a particular set of cards, and understand where that card and where that set and release fits into the entire ecosystem of maybe not the entire hobby, but at least that sport and that the seasonality of that sport. Understand that before you buy the cards, because the cards will always be there to buy, right?
Yeah, I think Chris said it well here in the chat, where he said my best ROI comes from either selling at shows or buying to flip at a show. We have had great experience buying at shows. Like I honestly just want to go to a show and just have a table that said, let me buy your cards. Like that's really all I want to do when I go to a show. I don't really like selling at a show because then you have well, will you take this? Oh, will you take this? And I was like, no, I'll just send it to my PSA vault and it'll sell for what I want it to sell for. But yeah. I love buying at shows because you have people that are willing to, like, you've got people that are $300 into a card and it's worth $500. And so they're just like, $400 cash is more than I had. So deal, and so I really like that environment of a show, but that's not always the best environment of a show when you're walking around. Like when you're walking around, you are the consumer. You know what I'm saying? I like to be the buyer, and
yeah. And also, Stargo Inc., new name in the live chat. I'd say this, I would validate this from my perspective. He says, I've heard multiple vendors say their 10 to 12-year-olds are making more money than them by running around buying, selling. So they're second guessing setting up at shows. I think that has been true. And I think that has had an effect on the show ecosystem. I don't know. This is a topic that I just wanted to share, like my experience. I just think my takeaways are there's no rush to buy cards. Just be smart, even at shows, and like have a strategy where you have your own methodology of determining based on comps what you're willing to pay for a card and based on your entire strategy, because these things haven't changed and will never change. People will always mark up their cards. People will always show you comps that are different than the comps that you're looking at. And they will work in their favor, not yours. And people will always lowball you for your cards. And so you have to be like, it's definitely like a dog eat dog world, more so, as friendly as the hobby is. And it's very friendly. And I'm not saying people, like, I had a blast talking to people. Everyone's super nice, but they're also sharks. Yeah. Everyone is a shark, even the 10 to 12-year-olds, even the guys that claim that they're the collectors and that they're doing, that they're for the good of the hobby BS. Like everyone, regardless of how they position themselves, everyone's in it for the same thing. And it's a super friendly hobby. If any of you go to a show, you're going to have a blast. That's not what I'm saying. And you're going to be able to just make sure that you don't go in and feel obligated to buy from anyone. Don't just believe the dealer's comps that they're showing you, or vice versa. Have your own data that you feel comfortable with and have your own strategy, and it's going to be fine for you. But I think if you go in with any kind of expectations to a card show for like setting up a vendor, having a certain amount of foot traffic, or even setting up a vendor and being able to buy people's cards, if you go in with the expectation of, as an attendee, you're going to get all these great deals, you're setting yourself up for failure. Go in with zero expectations. The only expectation you should go in with is that you lead a great life because you get to go to this card show, but then make fiscally smart decisions at the card show. So again, I'm gonna go through my strategy going into the card show and my pickups throughout the episode, but let's get in real quick to some quick hobby related news from over the past week. In the show notes here, Ben Johnson, former Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, hired as the Bears head coach. We've seen some Caleb Williams pricing going up because of that. So, you still like to see that, Lefty, because that's an indicator that, all of what we're about to talk about here real quick are indicators that the sports card market still does respond to these selling markers, and so even when a team gets a new head coach that's an offensive minded head coach, then the value of that quarterback goes up, which is cool. I think that's great. I think the thing people need to be careful about with Caleb Williams in terms of buying in, and I'm going to say the same thing about Jaden Daniels, who's the hottest thing in the hobby right now, is all their cards aren't out yet, and Prism just came out. So this is a warning of, Ben Johnson gets hired, Caleb's cards go up a little bit, and all of his cards aren't out yet. So that's my way of saying, if for whatever reason you're holding any Caleb Williams cards, you might want to take a look at what you're into it for and what it's at now, and it might be a good time to sell. Other hobby-related news we'll get to in a second, but while we're on kind of this player movement thing, obviously, since we last had a show, Ohio State won the national championship. So Will Howard, Quinshawn Judkins, Emeka Egbuka, Caleb Downs, and even Jack Sawyer. So Caleb Downs and Jack Sawyer on defense, their cards are up. A lot of their cards are up quite a bit. Great time to take a look at moving them. I wouldn't even I think a lot of people get wrapped up in the draft as a selling marker. That was a hypothesis we had heading into last year's NFL draft. The draft might be more of a sell by date for a lot of these players and not necessarily a selling marker leading up to a sell by date. So these, if if you own any cards for any of the guys I just mentioned, I would say it's more of like a selling marker on a performance spike. You're probably going to do better than waiting until the draft with those guys. From an NFL standpoint, man, so much for parity in the NFL, Lefty. We now have Eagles Chiefs, which is a repeat of 2 years ago. Last year's Super Bowl was a repeat, I believe, of 2 years prior to that. I mean, it's the same thing over and over again now, which is kind of disappointing, especially if you're a Bills fan or a Detroit Lions fan or a Commanders fan. But there you go. So Jaden Daniels, hottest thing in the hobby. He's kind of a different story, but Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, and Devonta Smith might be all guys to look at selling now. So yeah, I mean, Lefty, performance spikes from a lot of these guys. What's your take on that?
I was pretty happy with what Jaden Daniels put forward yesterday, even though he walks away with a loss. I think we could carry his market into the offseason being pretty confident about the player that he still is. I think I was afraid that it would all come crashing down, that he would get exposed and it would be just a horrendous showing from him. And it wasn't. To be honest, it was everybody but him was not playing well. Sure, he had the interception late, but the fumbles and stuff had nothing to do with him specifically, which gives me hope on his market going into the offseason. And I'm sure he'll be one of the most desirable cards as this offseason turns into the next season. I can see Jaden Daniels for sure. I would argue, even if Hurts wins the Super Bowl, all this, everything, I think out of the 3 quarterbacks that are going into this Super Bowl, he will be the one that people are still chasing, in 4 months. I think Patrick Mahomes' market will, we've talked about how people are expectations of Super Bowl, so Super Bowl doesn't spike his value really. Jalen Hurts, there's so many haters in the Hurts camp right now, even though he's leading them to the Super Bowl, which is crazy. There's so many haters. 5 months ago, they were talking about him and A.J. Brown were done, and A.J. Brown's talking about going to the Patriots and da-da-da. A lot of it's on the run game and the defense. I get that. Jalen Hurts' market is boo-boo right now. But then Jaden Daniels is still going strong, and still put a good showing together yesterday. So I feel for him. I really would have wanted to see that in the Super Bowl. My favorite Super Bowl would have been Commanders versus Bills, obviously. I know a lot of people are boycotting this Super Bowl. I've seen a lot of stuff saying, what's the point of watching this? We're being force-fed the Mahomes, Taylor Swift marketing era, et cetera, et cetera. It's all fake, da-da-da. And I think there's some legitimacy to that, and not necessarily to those claims, but that people are just done watching it, Yeah. And so I think the NFL is gonna be surprised with how many people watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, everyone's got their own personal reasons. The Lions not being in it sucks for me, and also I think it's boring to see. I mean, I'm Mr. Positive, I think, when it comes to this stuff, but I think it's boring that it's Eagles Chiefs again. I just don't I love the Super Bowl, but I'm not as interested. Now, going back to Jaden Daniels and cards, I think Jaden Daniels, I want everybody to be very careful because of what happened to CJ Stroud's cards. CJ Stroud was in this exact position last year. Yep. He won one less game than Jaden Daniels did in the playoffs, but it's essentially the same exact situation. And we all thought CJ Stroud was the next dynamic big thing on a team, quite frankly, that on paper was much better than the Commanders. So CJ Stroud, I think, is a perfect comp to Jaden Daniels. We've talked about this in recent episodes, and I think it's relevant because be careful, Jaden Daniels being the hottest thing in the hobby means you don't want to buy into him. You don't want to buy into Jaden Daniels. I'm going to flag plant right now and say buying into Jaden Daniels between now and July will be a horrible idea because as the NFL season approaches, his prices may rise, but as soon as the NFL season kicks off in 2025, there is more than likely going to be a massive drop off in his pricing. And so that's going to be for a few different reasons. Number one, it's going to be because he's not going to be the hot rookie anymore. Number two, it's going to be, I think, more quantifiable than that last statement is going to be because supply and demand will have changed quite a bit. There's going to be, slightly less demand and significantly more supply than there is right now. That's just a fact. There's nothing, no one can debate that between January 27th and September 7th, 2025. No one can challenge me on the fact that there will be significantly more supply of Jaden Daniels rookie cards. And I don't think anyone can challenge us either, Lefty, in saying that when there is more supply, that it does not affect the pricing negatively. So that's not to say that Jaden Daniels in the long term, that his cards won't do well. I think Jaden Daniels in the long term, his cards will continue to do well. I just think people, especially people that are new to the hobby, and when I say new to the hobby, I mean like even in the last 18 months. I mean, it took Lefty and I a couple years to figure this stuff out, the patterns, all of that. And now that we've been doing it into 5-6 years flipping and stuff, now we can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that the release calendar matters when it comes to stuff like this, and the player performance cannot overcome just the simple supply and demand stuff. So you just have to be careful. This is not me saying anything about predicting Jaden Daniels' future. CJ Stroud did not have as good of a sophomore season as we all thought he was going to. I'm not saying anything about Jaden Daniels' sophomore season. I'm saying even if he has a good sophomore season, his prices are going to be negatively affected by the amount of supply that there's going to be out there. So just be careful on that. Lefty, real quick, like, give me your thoughts on this, because Joe, Mofa Joe, and shout out to Joe. He and I spent some really good time with each other and with Bob, his guy Bob, who sets up the table at Culture Collision. But Joe does a great job on our show notes here. PSA expands grading services to Canada and Europe per Sports Collectors Digest. So PSA is moving its existing Canadian submission center in Halifax to a larger facility in Toronto. Its European operations will initially feature the opening of a PSA submission center in Germany. They also opened their first full-scale authentication and grading facility outside of North America in Tokyo in 2023. Lefty, what's your take on all that?
I love it. I'm a PSA lifer. So at this point, the behemoth seems to keep growing, but also I think this is going to be a further ease of access to us that are fans of it, and that it will be easier to get cards in and out, or there'll be faster processing. For this, it won't have a lot of the there won't be as many, if they obviously are putting other regional aspects out there. That's not all of those cards coming to bog down our facilities, which will be nice. But also it's a thing of the hobby is continuing growing internationally. And if we look at the sheer numbers of non-Americans out there, it's staggering. And if those people are interested in cards, that's going to grow what we're doing. We know me and you have had access to collectors in Australia and Europe and the UK and Canada, and there's just a lot more out there that could be tapped into if the hobby gets international to a real degree. And I think that this is a good move.
Yeah, I agree. Well said. And Fanatics is opening up a collectibles store in London, so that's notable. Also at Culture Collision, I ran into this guy who's a great guy that I've run into quite a bit at a bunch of card shows, who's a loyal listener of the show from Hong Kong. And he comes over, he runs a shop now. Well, he helps run a shop now in Hong Kong. And he comes over to get his inventory at the shows here. So he was at Culture Collision. So that there's definitely like an impact, a direct impact on the US market. The more that the world market expands, it's a positive impact on the US market, really being like the hub of the the manufacturing, the distribution of kind of the most popular sports currently in the hobby. We know like F1 and soccer and golf and the other, tennis, like we know that they have probably just as strong, if not, and even hockey, stronger markets as sports outside the US, but as sports trading cards, definitely not as big as baseball, basketball, and football. And so American football. And so I just think it's good. It's good for everybody, but definitely already a direct impact on the US market, having people come over from outside the US to attend shows like Culture Collision, the National, the Dallas show, all these shows to pick up inventory and just make the hobby stronger. So yeah, good stuff there. Now let's get into our play of the month. So every month on one of our episodes, Lefty and I talk about a play that we're going to focus on. My theme, my theme for the year is I'm only buying 5 players. So you're going to see 2 of my 5. Actually, I'll talk about 3 of my 5. 3 of my 5 players I'm making plays on this month. And so our minimum requirement, Lefty, is to come up with 1 play to talk about, but I have a lot. So I'm just going to talk about all of them, if that's okay with you. I'll try to go as fast as I can. So Lefty gets the mic here, but one of my major plays, and Joe and I were laughing, and even Maddox, because Maddox, M. Pokey World was at Culture Collision, and we were going through this, and I met a lot of people that I learned a lot about these star 1985 and 1986 Michael Jordan cards. This is my obsession right now, currently, in terms of plays, because I've already bought. Let's just do this. I'm just going to show my inventory tracker from nooffseason.com. So if you're a premium member at nooffseason.com, you get access to use one of our many features is our inventory tracker feature. It works like a frickin' charm, if I do say so myself. And I'm tracking my inventory. These are my purchases so far in 2025. And I've purchased a total of about just under 20 Michael Jordan cards, and about, let's just say, round number 12 of them are these star 1986 and 1985 cards. So at Culture Collision, I picked up 2 1986 Michael Jordan, the card number 5, the 1985 All-Star card, each in BGS 9. Recent comps on those are $12.50. Of course, it depends on the subgrades, but each that I picked up has 2 9s and 2 9.5 subgrades. One I got for $9.50 and one I got for $1,100. So each of them pretty significantly under comps. And then I got the number 1 checklist card in BGS 9, has an 8.5, 2 9s, and a 9.5 subgrade for $600. I got, and that's actually like a $850 or $800 card comps. 1986 number 7 in 8.5 BGS 8.5 career highlights card. So there's 10 of these cards, right? So that's why I'm saying like number 7, number 5, etc. So 2 9s, 2 8.5 subgrades. That's an $850 card I got for $750. And then 2 big boys on the Jordan Star going back. So those were the 86. Okay, Lefty. And I've already bought 4 other 86 stars that I've talked about on this show. And I've already cracked those out of BGS slabs and sent them to PSA. So we're going to circle back around and talk about what I may or may not do with these other 4 that I got. But I got 2 more star cards. One 1985 all rookie team number 2 in BGS 7. So this is 1985, so a different set in BGS 7. Last comp 1350, got it for 1250. And then this one is a 1985 star Michael Jordan number 1. It goes by last 11 rookie of the years, or Roy's, and it's the 1984-85 Rookie of the Year card. Got this for $1,600. There are comps at there are two comps at $2,000, and there are some other listings in lesser grades for higher numbers than that. So what's the play, right? Because I don't think anyone would debate the Jordan star significance, but what's the play? So the earlier play was undoubtedly crack and submit the PSA. The reason being is because there's not much population in PSA, because PSA just started grading those cards in 2023. There's not many comps in PSA slabs. So I'm kind of going against the grain. I'm going where they ain't with that strategy. And I'm saying nobody's doing this. I'm going to try it, and I'm going to list them strictly in buy it nows, because it's going to be, there's no comps. So if people really want these Jordan cards, they're going to pay what I'm asking for them. So the problem with that strategy is that there are no comps, really. Like, there's not many. There's comps for this one, this 1985 Rookie of the Years, number one. And there are comps for some of them, but there are not many PSA comps. And so that's a good thing and a bad thing. That's a huge risk, right? So this is the risk part of my, say, pie chart, 25 to 30% of my pie chart in these Jordan cards. But what I've also heard is that you can bump a BGS subgrade. Lefty, I'm sure you're familiar with bumping on a subgrade. So in other words, the way that I think that works is, let's take one of these, this BGS 9 from the card number 5, 1986 All-Star, the 1985 All-Star card for Star 86. It has a 9.5 centering and a 9.5 edges, 9 corners, 9 surface. My understanding is that, like, if I think that the corners could potentially get a 9.5, that I can submit this back to BGS and like essentially, like, quote unquote, ask them to bump it up a subgrade. I don't really know how that works, but you're trying to get them to bump it up a subgrade. And so that if you can get this bumped up a half of a subgrade, then that could then bring it up. This would bring this up to a 9.5, correct? Or like an 8.5 up to a 9, etc. 7.5 up to an 8, all that stuff. So even this 7 up to a 7.5 could drastically improve the value of that card in BGS. So now, to me, there are multiple potential plays with these Jordan cards, not just the crack and submit the PSA, but potentially even doing more research and trying to understand, do I just try to bump up a subgrade? And that can be significant. So now I'm in a situation, I think, with these Jordan cards where I don't know that there's a losing strategy. I just don't know yet what the real winning strategy is, which I'm trying to basically be maybe a pioneer here. What do you think, Lefty, on that?
I like the way that you're spreading it. You're spreading it in a couple different ways. You've done the PSA submission. You're doing the buying cheaper than they're listed. Like, you're doing a bunch of different strategies that are going to give you access to win in different areas. The subgrade thing is really curious to me, because I would say that some of those cards have been graded for a long time. Some of those guys that some of the BGS slabs that you are asking them to bump some grades on could have been graded 10 plus years ago.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's actually a really good point. So to that point, real quick, sorry to cut you off.
Oh, yeah.
To that point, I did go to Beckett's website and type in the cert numbers basically before. And I think that's a pro tip. Like, go before you pay like cash for these cards at a show or whatever, or bid on them on eBay for that matter. Make sure that the cert number shows legit, because there are fake Beckett slabs, like, as well as there's probably fake everything slabs. But anyway, to that point, Lefty, that's a good point, because it shows you on Beckett's website on the cert when it was graded. So, I haven't done that with all of them yet to analyze when it was graded, but I think you're right. I certainly need to do that before I make my final decision.
Because that could have been, that could be big for your subgrade argument. Like you might have to do some research on saying, when did they put what technology into place and and maybe it's different now. So I think that could be really interesting in terms of your argument for that.
Now, I walked away with 10 total Michael Jordan cards from Culture Collision. I also picked up, as you know, there's a ridiculous amount of Jordan cards, but he's ridiculously popular. So you just have to make sure that you do your research. There's a 1991-92 Upper Deck #1 promo card I bought in SGC 10 for $65. There's actually some PSA 10 comps for upwards of $130 and some SGC comps for much higher than 65. So I feel like I did well on that. So they weren't all, just so everybody knows, I wasn't spending thousands of dollars on every single card. I did buy some more manageable priced cards. There's a Jordan larger than life L1 insert out of 1995 Skybox that I got for $95 from Bob, who I mentioned earlier. Shout out to Bob, Joe's guy and now our guy. And it's definitely like in good condition, but I would say maybe a PSA 7 if I were to get it graded. But there are comps raw between 90 and, believe it or not, almost $600 for a raw one of these, which is kind of ridiculous. But Bob and I went over that before we made the deal. And then this 1994 Skybox Emotion N-Tense card. And what's interesting is these comp in PSA 9 for around between $250 and $350. And so I was able to put the dealer wouldn't budge off of $300 for the PSA 9, but the dealer also had an HGA 9 of the same card with
HGA. I haven't thought about that in a while.
I know, right? 3.9, and I've had success cracking HGA and submitting to PSA, believe it or not. I know that's not always going to be the case, but I've gotten lucky. 3 9s and an 8.5 for this HGA 9. So I got the pair for $500, Lefty. So if you look at it like, and actually the smart thing about this is in a PSA 8, it still comps for around $220. So my thought is crack this, submit them both together. I might crack this too and have them regrade the PSA. I don't know, but I'm at least going to crack this one and submit it to PSA. If I don't even do them together and resubmit them and see if I can't get 2 9s or maybe at least if I get a 9 on this one, or even if I get an 8, I still think it's a good deal. And then if I just keep this in a PSA 9, I'm going to do the old list it and a buy it now for $400 so the Jordan, just so everybody knows the way I'm thinking of this, the Jordan part of my portfolio is the patient on the selling, right? Because he's Michael Jordan. There's no rush to sell him. And if I'm spending all this money on Jordan cards, I need to make sure that I really don't auction any of them and screw myself over, because there really is no selling marker for him. So the selling marker, the play is to do something with the grading, right? To change the value of the card. Maybe this PSA 6 1985 one, though, where I'm not going to do anything with that. That's what I list for like $4,000 because there's not many of them. It's like a pop 22 with like 90 higher. So there's just not many of them. So people want it. There's not going to be many listed at any given time. Somebody out there wants it. They got to pay the $4,000. It just might mean yours truly has to come up with a little bit more patience, but that's why the rest of my portfolio is going to be moving through quicker. And so that when we get to Shohei Ohtani, I bought several 2018 Bowman base 49 Raws, right at around the $30 target cost that the formula likes. And so I'm submitting them to PSA, although many people ask, what do you do when you get a card you know is not going to gem? What I did with one of those, because I got one from eBay, I took it to Culture Collision and I sold it for $20 cash. So it comps for around 30, sell it for 20 cash. Now you're in a situation where instead of wasting $20 on the grading, I got $20 cash back. Yeah, I'm out $10, but I'd rather be out $10 and knowing that it's probably going to get a 7 than paying an additional 20 and then getting the 7 back, right? So I'm getting better at that stuff. And then 3 more bigger things I want to talk about real quick. 2 Victor Wembanyama 2023 Topps Chrome Refractor Raw that I got for $90 total, which is well under the $45 is well under the target cost that we would have on that for the formula. They're either going to do really well or they're going to come back miscut from PSA. So TBD on that, but they're going to PSA. And then for those of you who are premium members, or if you're not premium member, go get a free 30-day trial at nooffseason.com. Check out the premium pod on that where we explain it. Andy Broom explains why they would be miscut. That's why I say that. And then I did get 2 eBay purchases that I am stoked about. One is this one that I won last night. It is, not this one. I'm showing you the wrong one. This is the one that I aspire. This is the play. So
I was like, dang, okay.
Please hold. So the one that I bought last night is the raw version of it. So here we go for everybody listening. 2023 Topps Chrome Victor Wembanyama on card auto raw. So I won it from a Probstein auction that had 51 bids. I won it for $1,030. So Victor Wembanyama is one of the other 5 players I'm buying. The play is to grade it because I think it looks great and try to turn it into this, which I inadvertently showed first, which is the PSA 10. Now I'm not going to grade the auto because my auto looks kind of
not good.
It looks good, but it's just like the pen
not compared to the other one
running out of ink. Yeah. Compared to this one. And this is another little pro tip for everybody. So this card is going to sell probably, so the auction ends later tonight. It's going to easily sell for over 6,000, I would say, because it's got 57 bids, 9 hours left, and it's already at like $4,400. So this PSA 10, I'm going to try to turn it into a PSA 10, but I'm not going to grade the auto. This one has an auto 10, but I think I would do close to just as well if this card got a 10. So that's,
what's the 9 going for?
Don't know. Great question. I should have come prepared with that. Maybe I'll look that up as you're talking.
It's got to be more than 1,000. So
I think so. I would think so because I would also think it's a lower
pop count
situation. And then the last thing I'll show real quick, because Arch Manning is one of the other 5 players that I'm buying. Is I was able to win what I think is kind of a steal. I was like, purchase history. Duh. Okay. So I was able to win a card that I've already owned a couple of times. 2023. Now, mind you, 2024 Panini Prism draft picks are out. They have Arch Manning in them. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. I'm still doing my research, but what I do feel good about is going and buying the 2023 Panini Prism draft picks. And I got the Saturday Star signatures Panini sealed. And it looks like I made an offer or they made me an offer after I looked at it. And I paid a total of $579.65 for this card that they wanted $675 for. And if you just go look around at recent comps of this card raw, they're much higher than that.
I've been looking at this card. I actually had this same card in. I'm one of the likes on this. I've been watching this one as well. So when it went off the market, I was pretty bummed.
I can't believe I got it for that cheap.
Yeah, I can't either because I would have smashed that buy button as well. So
I borderline would have bought it for the $675, and I got it for basically $100 less. So
that card I think is going to be special when we look at Arch Manning cards, and when we look back, I think that might be his Texas card that people think about. The more cards that come out of Arch, the more I keep desiring that original Prism look that we sold like a long time ago, you know, and so I've been going back through saying, man, I wonder if I could make another raw to grade play on more of those Arch Manning cards that we did way early on. Most of mine were not autographed. I think I had one auto back in the day, but I love the fact that this is back in the portfolio for you, because it's been back in the portfolio for me as well. So,
man, I love that you just said all of that. I love everything that you just said, that this could be his Texas card. This is my favorite Arch Manning card, so I'm pumped to have it back too. And so you can see what I'm doing here in my inventory tracker is I'm just going ahead and entering it in. And the way that I like to manage my inventory tracker is, oh, I had already had it. That's weird. So now I can delete it. There's another little feature of the inventory tracker. So now you can see my entire inventory tracker, every card that I've bought so far in 2025. You'll notice Arch, Jordan, Shohei, and Wemby. So the question is, who's the fifth player? Lefty, remind the audience who my fifth player is.
Caitlin Clark.
So why haven't I bought any Caitlin Clark cards yet? Lefty, you want to take a quick guess before we get to your plays of the month?
Because Prism isn't out yet.
That's right. Not all of her cards are out yet. Lefty, you nailed it, brother. A lot of jam-packed info, right? And as I've just been rambling along, I think there's been a lot of good sports card strategy tips in there. So Lefty, over to you though for your play or / plays of the month that you're going to be making.
Yeah, mine is so throughout this whole year, what we're going to find out is that your auctions, because there's 5 of them, are going to be very calculated, very similar, very you might be getting different variations of the same card. I mean, think the star card you just talked about. You're essentially talking about, I mean, I know it's not one card, but you're talking about different grades and subgrades of a similar card. For me, it's just like, where's the money potentially in 3 months, you know? And so when I think about that, it's like, it's baseball buying season, or it already has been, you know, and right now it's in baseball flipping season. And here's what I mean by that. You need to be looking at selling your cards in less than 3 months at this point. So you need to have like fast turnaround cards if you're going to be getting into baseball at this point, because I would argue that is the massive time to get out of baseball is right at the beginning and at the All-Star break. And then there's a couple of cards that you can make money on in September. But like the huge selling marker for me the last 5 years has been March. If you look at my eBay store, it won't be this way this year because of my tactics are different. But if you go back and look at the history of all of my sales over the past 5 years, March and April have a massive spike in it compared to everything else, because that's awesome. I basically liquidate everything I have, because for a long time, all I did was baseball cards. Now, the past year and a half has been different because I felt more confident in other sports, especially since we've grown. And so I've been able to like move into other places. But this is the time of year where I get like, my hands get a little bit sweaty thinking about like, it's about the time to just list everything, you know, and really that gives me a little bit of nervousness, because you're just like, when you put cards up, you don't know what they're going to sell for, you know, like you hope for the best, but it's like auctions are scary to me, you know, and so I understand that if that's you, if you're sitting in that seat. But my play of the month here is I'm looking for a couple of different guys. I wouldn't say these are the cards I'm buying, but these are the auctions that I'm looking at, like the players that I'm looking at their cards to potentially move into. I've talked about this last couple of weeks. Bazana, I'm all in on. I think I even had Paul looking for some of them at the Culture Collision, and you know, like, so I've been looking at some on eBay. They're kind of hard to find, especially some that look gradable. But Bazana, I think, is going to be a good addition and a good sell in March and April. I have said this a couple times over the past year, but I also think it's a good time to be buying into Kumar Rocker. His narrative and storyline could be a very lucrative decision for people, and I think he's going to have the opportunity to start. When I look through the divisions, so what I like to do is when I'm preparing for a sport that I haven't touched in a while, like in my head, I look at all the divisions and I'm like, okay, look at the divisions, which teams are going to have good narratives and which teams are going to have players that the narratives are going to play towards a card value. Like that doesn't mean you like the player. That doesn't mean think Dylan Cruz. I hated on Dylan Cruz for a while, but we still sold his cards when he came up with the Nationals because money was still there to be made. I'm going to still go back to the well of saying that Drew Jones was not the guy because clearly people have just forgotten about him. So maybe someday he will have some cards worth marketing, but that's the kind of things I look at. So I look at the NL East and I'm thinking, okay, the NL East, the Mets spent a ridiculous amount of money on Soto. The Braves have Acuna coming back. Philly has Harper. I think this division, Miami is god-awful. But then you've got the Nationals got some really young, good pieces. I think there's going to be some extreme media around this division. Therefore, I really like I'm looking into Soto, obviously, some of his older cards, see if I can find a good deal there because they will sell. And I'm really liking Acuna, trying to come off the injury, coming back into the fold. I think do
we need to get Jake to run more Acuna cards through the formula?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think running some Acuna cards would be good through the formula. Also, this is kind of a wild shot, but I think Harper's cards could be valuable. I think he will get the opportunity to say, yeah, Soto, yeah, Acuna, but don't forget, I'm also in this division, and he is worth looking at as well. And then I look at the Royals. The Royals are a very interesting team. Obviously, they have Bobby Witt Jr., but they have a lot of other players on that team that are right about to be in their primes. So typically when you look at a good franchise, there's one guy leading the way, and then there's a couple other big pieces that stand up. So what other pieces on this team are going to stand up and what could be valuable? Some people are like, oh, yeah, Vinny Pasquantino. I would argue he's already stood up. So it's like, what other piece? And people are like, well, maybe it's like MJ Melendez. If you look back at his minor league numbers, they weren't good. So I'm not expecting him to get any better in the pros. And here's where I like, this is what I like. Michael Massey. This is a deep cut for me. Michael Massey, it was a $5 Topps auto that I bought on a Let's Talk Wax recommendation 3 years ago. People are like, oh, Michael Massey's going to be something. He comes up to the majors, does exactly what he does in the minors. He hits, and he plays in the infield with Bobby Witt Jr. I think 2025 could be a year Michael Massey gets the respect he deserves, and his cards are fairly cheap. His autos are in 2020 Bowman Chrome, and I personally like the out of 150 blue parallels. They are very cheap, and if he really right now, nobody's looking at Michael Massey. He is my, the risky, what do we used to call it? The
Flyers?
Yeah. So Michael is already in the MLB. He doesn't need to be a flyer, but he is a flyer because nobody's heard of him.
Deep cut is a good call.
He's a deep cut.
In fact, we need to bring deep cuts into the Sports Card Strategy Show segments, Lefty. I like deep cuts.
There you go. So deep cut would be Michael Massey. I believe that he will get some residual rise as well with Bobby Witt Jr. being in the infield with him this year. And so that's the other guy that in my plays of the month, I am eBay. When I say Googling, I mean on eBay.
Okay.
I am
searching on eBay. Everyone just uses Google for the word search, but you mean you're Googling it on eBay.
Google has had enough of an impact on my life that anytime I search anything in a search bar, it's Googling it.
Yep.
So yes, those are the guys that I am perusing over the next month.
Love it. Love it. So people have been knocking down the door, banging at the Sports Card Strategy Show door for more Lefty baseball talk. And there you have it. Love it. I like the sweaty hands comment when it relates to I get that way too. I know exactly what you mean. It's like, oh, I want to sell. I'm ready to sell this. Should I sell it now? Should I wait? Should I sell it now? So just the anticipation of the hype rise leading up to the season.
And I didn't only look at guys that no one's ever heard of this time. Most of the Brian said.
We're laughing at the same thing at the same time.
Already coming in hot on Austin Shenton. per Aram or Leighton's recommendation, Austin Shenton.
Oh, you're throwing Aram under the bus. I like.
No, I'm just saying I wasn't the only one.
He usually only compliments Aram. It's good. It's good to give Aram an L. We're about to get into L of the week. So Aram's L of the last 5 years was Austin Shenton.
Yeah, maybe. And so MJ Melendez was also on Aram's list. So let's just put it there. The guy's really smart. We'll put it that way.
He's smart. Everybody loves Aram, so it's all good.
But I only talk about prospects that haven't made the MLB yet. There's only one guy that I just mentioned in all of those guys that hasn't played in the MLB yet, and that's Bazana.
It's true.
I think I'm evolving, but also my strategy is evolving, and I think baseball cards are evolving as well.
Agree. Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think Lefty's always done a good. For those of you who don't know, Lefty's always been one of the better people in the hobby at learning and making slight tweaks to his sports card strategy based on those learnings. So I like what he's doing there. Quick story on Brian Steeler 714 before we get into L of the month. We got L of the month and W of the month coming up next, so stay tuned for that. But Brian Steeler 714, I was walking around with the social media representative for collectibles for eBay, and she'd come from the fashion world. So she at the National. So at the National, she asked me to give her a little tour. Lefty and I had given a coworker of hers a tour the year before at the National. And Megan, who's become a good friend of Lefty and myself from eBay, shout out to Megan.
Come on, Megan.
She introduced us to her new coworker, this Canadian in Cleveland. Yeah, Canadian. So I took her new coworker around, who's the new head of collectibles social media content, had come over from fashion at eBay. And so she needed an overview on sports cards. So as I was walking around, she wanted to pass through the PSA booth. So we passed through the PSA booth, and who is sitting there submitting cards to PSA and just absolutely dissecting their condition under the microscope in the PSA booth is none other than Brian Steeler 714. And so I look over at him, and we had met the year before at the National, and I just go, Brian, and he jumps up, Paul, and we give each other a big hug. And this eBay woman is like, what the heck is going on? And I said, that is one of our day one listeners, Brian Steeler 714. So real quick, not to make this episode about Brian Steeler 714, but the Austin Shenton thing got me because Lefty and I each made some pretty ridiculous flyer picks early on in our tenure together. And Austin Shenton was one that he's blaming Aram for, but I distinctly remember that. So I love it. Thank you, Brian. We both got a kick out of that one.
Brian does ask about Sebastian Walcott. He is a Rangers prospect right now that is climbing ranks at an unprecedented rate. Sebastian Walcott went from being a small flyer international prospect that the Rangers spent very little money on to, I think MLB has him ranked as of this last week, like in the top 20. So Sebastian is flying up people's draft boards up their prospect boards, and the Rangers did not want to trade him in the Max Scherzer trade, which almost held it up originally. So they obviously think this guy's the bomb. His hit tool is amazing. But Brian Steeler 714 says, hey, Lefty, what's the best card of his 2023 first Bowman, which is not autographed, or his 2024 Bowman first auto? Personally, I would rather have the first non-auto, which I know is a strange thing. I just like the way it looks a little bit better. Plus, they could scale a little bit easier when you submit 20 of them to PSA and get back PSA 10s.
There you go. Bang for the buck. Love it. Good question, Brian. Great answer, Lefty. Let's get into L of the month. This can really mean anything. We just happen to call it L from the past month. At Culture Collision, I was shopping around some cards. My Culture Collision strategy was to go in specifically and try to move out of the few cards that I had left and then move into the Jordan cards. So for those of you, if you're like first time, long time, whatever kind of time listener to the show, it doesn't matter. You might be thinking, wow, Paul, you spent a lot of money at Culture Collision. If you rewind the episode and I was telling you all the prices of all the cards that I got from Culture Collision, you're probably like, dang, you went in there and spent like that many thousands of dollars. No, I didn't. I got all of those cards essentially because I took inventory that I had that I strategically wanted to move out of. And the first thing I did within the first 5 minutes I walked in on Friday is I sold all of that, basically, almost all of it. I ended up selling all but one card that I brought. I only brought probably 100 cards. I didn't bring like a ridiculous amount, but I brought probably 100 cards. I sold all but one, and I'll talk about that in a second. But what that made me realize is like, what were my L's? Like, where did I take a bath? Where did I do well? Kind of a thing. My Hendon Hooker plays were an L. Okay. I'm just ready to come out and say it. I decided it was definitely time to cut bait with my Hendon Hooker plays. So I had bought 3 last year in the summer, right before, I think in June, I had purchased 3 Hendon Hooker Prism PSA 10s. One was an orange out of 60, and then one was like a red out of 149 and a purple out of 225, something like that. Okay. 3 cards. I think I paid around between $200 and $250 for each card. Just weird comps because they're low serial numbered. And that was a risk I took in my portfolio, a calculated risk. The reward would have been, if Jared Goff would have gotten injured, Hendon Hooker likely would have stepped in as a first-round talent that fell to the 3rd round when he was drafted a couple of years ago as the Detroit Lions starter. Obviously, none of that happened. And not only that, but Hendon Hooker didn't even make an appearance in the playoffs. Teddy Bridgewater did when Jared Goff got knocked out of the game for a drive. So the value of those cards went down huge. So that was an L, right? I did, as I was selling my cards, I bit the bullet and I was like, I'm going to get rid of these hookers. I don't even know. Like, it's just an L.
Get these hookers out of here.
Get these hookers out of here. Like, I paid too much for these hookers. I mean, there's a lot of different, one-liners you could throw out.
You know, we're doing the graphics this week. And so for those of you that don't know, we're launching a new social media graphic this week, and Mofa Joe is going to have 4 quotes with 4 pictures, and I hope that I paid too much for these hookers.
Joe, we're spoon feeding you. I paid too much for these hookers. So there you go. You're welcome. Good call on that, Lefty. I forgot about this new social media graphic. That's going to be great.
I've been worried about it all day. I think I'm going to say something. That's going on. And you did it.
There it is. I paid too much for the Hendon Hookers. That was an L. However, I did get bailed out by a dealer who gave me $200 trade value towards one of the Jordans for one of the 3. So on one of the 3, I actually kind of broke. Okay, Joe just said it's in there. He's in the live chat. Okay, I like that.
You got bailed out for his love for hookers.
The Jordan Love Prism Silver PSA 10 that I bought right before the season for around $850, traded in for $600 in trade value. People didn't even want to pay $600 for that card cash. So point being, 2 L's, Hendon Hooker, Jordan Love. Jalen Milroe Jungle Auto Panini Instant NIL out of 25 was another L. No one even wanted that card. The last comp, there's 2 comps of that card, one for 125 and one for 175. I think I probably paid $250 for that card. No one even wanted that card. So I still own it, but Lefty, nobody even wanted it. I probably would have sold it, honestly, for some cash to, just because you get in the card show mode and you're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm going in this direction. There's this card, like I'm going to end up holding the bag on this thing. Well, I'll probably eBay auction it off for maybe around $50 to $100 at some point in the next few months. I would have rather had just $50 cash at the show. Nobody would even do that for that Jalen. And it's because he shat his pants so bad against Michigan in the bowl game, but there's nothing we can do about that now. So, I mean, bringing it full circle on my L. I strategically made the decision to move out of cards that I felt were going to continue to go down in value over the next 6 months. And I bit the bullet, took cash or trade value for them at Culture Collision, along with a lot of wins that I sold. And I didn't spend a penny at Culture Collision. All the cards that I got that I showed you at the beginning of the show and that I talked about, the 10 Jordans, that's all just basically even trade. So now, and Lefty, you can maybe speak to this a little bit before you get into your L's. You've done this. You're very good at this, where it's like, I'm going to move into things that are going to go up. As these things are going down, I'm going to take an L and I'm going to move this if I can move all of this that's going down that didn't do what I thought it was going to do and move into things that are going to go up, then that might be sometimes our best bet. So that's what I did with the Jordans.
Yeah, I think that's been my main strategy in investing in general. Like previous to sports cards or even sports cards or honestly, even how I play dynasty sports in fantasy football. If you've got assets that are going down, pair them together with something that's going up. Don't necessarily sell low. I'm not saying that. Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, I think there is a value in looking at an asset thinking and not trying to hope on something that's going on that's going to be in the future. It's not going to be like, well, I hope, so-and-so is going to be in the future. Da-da-da. Like if you have to convince yourself to hold it, that's probably bad. And so like, just get out of it. You're going to be healthy. You're going to feel more confident about your cards that you got. And we're talking about confidence, and it's something that's really big. And so sometimes when you walk into you walk into a negotiation with a 50% sellable car and you've got confidence in it, you're going to get it sold. But anyway, my L's from the past month have been, as you guys know, I think a couple of months ago, I said, I have graded more PSA slabs or cards at PSA than I have in ever, and so like, I think I was like 10 or 15x more than I'd ever done in the past couple of months. The L is PSA grades are expensive when they go poorly, so like best case scenario, which is something I'm going to talk about in my wins, it's a huge win. When they go poorly, it's a huge L, and so like you've got to be able to compensate for the L when it comes. So for instance, my Arch Manning cards did not grade well at all. And I took an absolute bath in the Arch Manning non-auto PSA grades because it was like 7s and 8s and 9s, and I didn't get my money back on hardly any of them. So I just took a big L on that. But as we're going to talk about in the next, I guess the next section or later on in this episode, there are awesome ways that it can just like you can make bank on it too. So I think the L is once you push into a new area, you've got to be ready for the dark side of said area to hit you. And I think moving into bulk grading at PSA, when a 20 card submission doesn't go well, that's pretty expensive. So that's my L of the month.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good one there. All right. We had one other like little thing that this is the first time we've done this, but we make every month on the show, we make a from the formula play, and then we try to hold ourselves accountable to that play. And it's a little bit awkward because sometimes certain plays need more time to materialize than just a month. But basically what I did was I went back to a month ago, our play from the formula to see whether it's an L or a W.
Oh, yeah.
And yours was a Chet Holmgren 2022 Prism Silver. That PSA 10 is down 25% since that play. So you're banking on, I'm not calling it an L yet.
Yeah,
but you're banking on a playoff run for that. I mean, that's kind of was the So I don't think it's fair to call that an L yet, even though I'm implying that it's an L. It's not though, because Chet's going to make a playoff run and his prices are going to go up, right, Lefty?
I got you.
Okay, so mine from a month ago was a Caitlin Clark 2024 Select WNBA Concourse Silver Flash. That card is up 63% or $59. So if we're keeping score on like by month, it looks like I'm winning over Lefty and he's losing.
Right.
So, but what I'm saying is, I'm just saying that for fun.
I'm still banking on the absolute juice that I got in December of 2022 when you said Lefty's going to win 2024.
Yeah.
And I did. And
That's
I'm
right.
still living on that.
We're all about positivity here at the Sports Card Strategy Show. And even when we make an L, we got to just come on and say, like, look, I crapped the bed. We don't always win. So there it is. W from the past month. Lefty, I'll go first. I know you got some W's from the past month. Mine, you're going to be able to relate to at least one of mine, and I did a sports card school video on it as well. My Topps Now PSA 10 sales and my Panini Instant PSA 10 sales have done very well. My Arch Manning AMA PSA 10s, I sent 20 of them to my PSA vault, the PSA 10s. The other 5, so I got 20 10s. The other 5 I had pre-sold from the grenade. Mm-hmm. So they were selling for around between as low as $40 and as high as $50 on PSA's eBay account, like in auctions and buy it nows. Well, I went in, and again, check out Sports Card School at nooffseason.com for more details on this. I went in and I had 20 offers ready to accept or deny from PSA. After my research, I accepted all 20 offers. I accepted them at $38.25 per card, which doesn't seem earth-shattering. But this netted me, in the end, it netted me $260 total dollars, and all I had to do was click accept 20 times. So I was actually pretty happy with that. Did not have to mail any of the cards or anything like that. I then, through my eBay account, sold 25 of the Caitlin Clark number 204 Panini Instance, mainly all PSA 10s. And that netted me $150 total net profit for those cards. Had to do a little more work because I had to pack and ship those. Then from my eBay account, I sold 20 of the Hail Mary Jaden Daniels Topps Now cards, number 11. They weren't all 10s, but they were mostly 10s. And that netted me $240 total net profit. Then from the PSA vault, I auctioned off all but one, so 9 out of the 10 Shedeur Sanders sunglasses Topps Now plays. And I averaged about $10 total net profit per card on those. So just under $100 basically. Now I will say, so that this is like, I wanted to kind of highlight these because a lot of you see how my portfolio is diversified. It's diversified between like lower dollar bulk raw to grade plays that I'm moving in and out of like right away to all the way up to the Jordans that I'm like, they're more expensive and I'm holding and doing more research on and that kind of thing. But I think at one more parting shot here before we go over to Lefty's W's. One of the people I spoke to at Culture Collision this past weekend, and this happens all the time, I get this like, I think it's a myth that Lefty and I continue to debunk. And the myth is any lower dollar cards like that just aren't worth my time. You know, and then it's usually followed up with, in order for me to make money, I've determined that I need to buy higher dollar cards only. And I looked the guy straight in the face. He's a listener of the show. I looked him straight in the face and I said, I think you're wrong. And I kind of tried to explain it. But I don't know, Lefty, do you want to elaborate on that before you go into your W's?
The elaboration is I've made most of my money on cards under $10.
Yeah. And
now,
I think I think the reason why is because they're easier for people to buy. There's more sales comps on them. There's more confidence in those cards. But what do you think?
I mean, I just think like in the way that there's just more of them. Therefore, like you can go, if you know what you're doing, you can go and get selective, and then it's pretty easy to go find a card that looks like it could be gradable and grade it. And the real hustle behind that is just knowing what you're looking for. Spend some time educating yourself on what is a good centered or corners looking card. Go find a PSA 10 looking raw card of that's $10 or so, and go put it in there. And like usually the tops now and Panini instant plays have been what that is for us as well, because they're coming in. The Panini ones are what, $4, and the tops ones are 10-ish. So I've made good money on those plays that we've made, the smart ones that we've made over the past year. I've made good money on those as well. So, which goes down to my win of the past month. Very, very similar story to your Arch AMA. I graded my Caitlin Clark Rookie of the Year cards. I got 40 or 50 of them graded. 35 of them came back 10s, which was awesome. That's awesome. And then, and I was like, this was a card that I flag planted on, and I was like, this is going to be a highly desirable card. I looked in my vault, and I didn't send these straight to eBay auction, and I actually thought that was an accident at the time. I was like, crap, I wanted to send them straight to eBay. So they went to the vault instead. So I had to wait like 4 or 5 days for them to get into the vault. Once they were in the vault, I looked and I had 44 offers from PSA's instant buyout feature. They were giving me buyouts at $87.60 on a PSA 10 of this card. And I was like, oh, I think that's less than they're going for now. So I just went and looked it up. And the past comps of the last 5 sold were under $80. I don't know why they were giving me $10 to $15 more than they were selling for, but I smashed that sell button 30 times. So I ended up selling 30 of the 10s for a profit of $2,630, or a sell marker of $2,630. And I spent on the entire play, including grading and the paying for them to come from Panini, $1,103. So
congratulations. That's a huge win.
That's just getting rid of 30 of the 10s. I kept 5 of them. Now all the 9s are still on auction. I technically have an 8 that is on auction, and then I have a PSA 3 that I'm going to frame. I don't know why a PSA 3 came out and all of those other ones were 9s and 10s, but pretty hilarious. So I ended up making a lot of cheddar there on a big play for me that I had a lot of money in for Lefty. For Lefty, $1,000 in a card is a lot, and so also did pretty well with the Jaden Daniels play. All of mine are currently at auction, the one that he was just talking about. I thought that was going to play out super nicely when he was going to go to the Super Bowl. I don't know what it's going to happen now that he's not in football. So I might end up actually taking an L on this because he's just been eliminated. So I'd be curious to see what my sales look like next to Paul's sales, who sold them a couple weeks ago. I also got out of all of my Roki Suzuki's with a profit margin. I held them way longer than I wanted to because I thought he was going to come out last winter, but I ended up getting out for a Cherry Blossom PSA with 38% margin. And then I sold another one for 68% margin because I bought it for $10, and I sold it for almost $100. And then I also sold Haaland as well this week because Manchester City is back on the way up, and he just signed a 9-year extension with Manchester City. So I was holding until he potentially moved to Real Madrid, but obviously if you sign a 9-year extension with a team, you're not moving anytime soon. So
that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Congratulations on those wins, Lefty. My Caitlin Clarks and my Cooper flags. My Caitlin Clark Rookie of the Year is still in research and ID, which is frustrating. 25 of them. And then my 70, well, they're not all my 70. 40 of them are mine. 30 of them belong to some other premium members at nooffseason.com, but they are in Research and ID as well. My Cooper Flag Bowman U now and my Caitlin Clark Rookie of the Year are in 2 separate submissions, each in research and ID, which is just it is what it is. I know they'll move. I know I'll get them back, but it's
Mine
money.
are still
It's
in
money
order
just-
arrived. So they haven't even gotten that far yet.
Your Cooper Flags because but yeah, we know why that is though.
Yeah,
because
but I also have 2 other submissions that I submitted at the end of December that are still in order arrived as well. So they're just extremely backlogged right now. They pushed through the ones that I had before the December, the holiday things that they did. They pushed those all through, but now my holiday special ones that I put in are all still way backed up. So.
One thing that is a common thread throughout all of our content is how to find gradable cards online. And MoFod Joe thought that was one of the better videos that we've put at Sports Card School recently. And so that is our eBay lesson of the week that we wanted to talk about briefly on today's show. How to find a gradable card online. It talks through Lefty and I, both of our strategies related to how we do this, because it is one of the harder things to do. There's obviously like attrition that happens from the cards that we acquire. They're not all submittable, but most of them are, just because of the way that the way that we make decisions with what we buy online. We're very selective. We look at specific things in a specific order. We only pay a certain price. We only buy in certain situations. And Lefty has a great tip where he walks through comparing a PSA 10 and a PSA 9 of that card to the card that you're looking at buying, which is really helpful. So I go over all that. It's a 12-minute video, so I'm not going to play it on today's show, but it is there for you premium members of nooffseason.com. If you don't have a premium membership, I've actually added 2 other options. There's always been a free 30-day trial. Okay. So you can get a free 30-day trial. After your free 30-day trial, you become an annual member, and that's the best value. You save 30% that way. So not only do you get a free month, but you save 30% becoming an annual member. But I've added 2 other ways to do it. I've added a weekly membership. So now there's no trial for that. You just sign up, but it's per week, $9 per week, or $29.99 a month with a one-time sign-up fee of $9.99. So if you just want to pay month by month, there's that option. If you want to pay week by week, there's that option, or you can still always get the free 30-day trial at nooffseason.com to ask an unlimited amount of questions. We answer them on the premium pod. There's one question we'll take before we sign off for today's show. Old Metal Guy has a simple one for Lefty and I to answer. Can you submit a BGS slab to PSA, and if they don't think the grade will improve, i.e. BGS 9.5 to PSA 10, will they just send it back? Yes, there is that option. You would do the crossover grading service, and you would select the only proceed with grading if it will be a minimum of a 10 in that case. However, I can tell you pretty much beyond a shadow of a doubt, Old Metal Guy, that they will just you do pay for it though, regardless of if they grade it or not. And so they're just going to take your money. It's going to be like probably a total of between $50 and $70 when it's all said and done, including the shipping and all that. So basically, my opinion, my experience-based opinion is that you're just going to be without your card for several weeks, and they're just going to take $70 of your money, and you're going to end up with your same card back. So that's why we talk about crack and submit a lot. I've done the crossover grading thing. It's never really worked out for me. That's why I crack and submit. But Lefty, do you have any experience with the actual crossover grading?
Yeah, I had one good experience with it, and it was from a BGS 9.5 to a 10. I paid too much for it. You know, at the time, I think it was $100 to do a crossover grade. I did get the 10 back, And then I ended up losing money on the card in the long run. So, like that was also during 2021. So it was like, it was just crazy out there, So, I would not recommend crossing over. I would just either risk it and crack it and submit it, or be happy with what you got.
Yeah, I mean, go to nooffseason.com/ask old metal guy and get a free 30-day trial and let us know more about what the card is exactly, and we can help you even further. But great show today, Kendall the Lefty McKee. Do you have anything else you want to add before I hit him with the outro?
I just would like to tell you that it's probably good for you to just stop spending money on hookers. That's it.
I will never buy another hooker ever again. I bought 3 too many hookers in 2024 and no more hookers for me.
Good on you.
Have a great day. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks so much for being here with us on the Sports Card Strategy Show. If you enjoyed the content on today's show, there's plenty more waiting for you at nooffseason.com. Just go to nooffseason.com right now and get a free 30-day trial. You get our formula-based sports card rankings, sports card school, inventory tracker, the ability to grade with us, and the premium podcast where we answer an unlimited amount of your questions. Check it out right now at nooffseason.com. For everyone at nooffseason.com, I'm Paul Hickey. Thanks again for being here with us on the Sports Card Strategy Show. We'll see you again soon. Have a great day.